Greetings in the best of health. That would be prayer, power, peace, patience, and prosperity. I'm going to read an excerpt from a book that I have written, Mental Constellation, The Internal Struggle and Quest of Social Economic Change, Volume 1. Mental constellation. If you observe the constellations above it, from my point of view, it seems as though that they are interdependent or in harmony with one another. Mental constellation, the internal struggle, the internal struggle in quest for social and economic change. I'm going to read from a chapter of the book called Mental Values. I'm just going to read an excerpt from it about how the Irish found their footing at the ballot box. Although stereotype as how it may seem, loyalty only to the Pope and ill-suited for democracy, and only recently given political rights by the British in their former home after centuries of denial, the Irish were deeply engaged in the political process in their new home. They voted in higher proportions than any other ethnic group. One of African Americans see some parallel there. Their sheer numbers helped propel William R. Grace to become the first Irish Catholic mayor of New York in 1880, and Hugh O'Brien, the first Irish Catholic mayor of Boston 4 years later. A generation after the Great Hunger, the Irish controlled powerful political machines in the cities across the United States and were moving up the social ladder into middle class as an influx of immigrants from China and southern and eastern Europe took hold in the 1890s. Being from the British Isles, the Irish were now considered acceptable and assimilable to the American way of life. Dolan writes, a new, longer embedded in the lowest rung of American, no longer embedded in the lowest rung of American society. The Irish unfortunately gained acceptance in the mainstream by dashing out the same bigotry toward newcomers that they had experienced. County Cork native Working Men's Party leader Dennis Kearney, for example, closed his speeches to the American laborers with his rhetorical signature, whatever happens, the Chinese must go. Kearney and other Irish failed to learn the lesson of their own story. Yes, the Irish transformed the United States just as the United States transformed the Irish. But the worst fears of the natives were not fulfilled. The refugees from the Great Hunger and the 32 million Americans was predominantly Irish roots today strengthen the United States, not destroyed it. A country that once reviled the Irish now wears green on it. St. Patrick's Day. That's something to raise a glass to. Through 7 terrible years of famine, Irish poetic landscape authored tales of macabre, barefoot mothers with clothes dripping from their bodies clutch dead infants in their arms as they begged for food. Wild dogs searching for food, fed on human corpse. The country's legendary 40 Shades of Greens stained the lips of the starving who fed tufts of grass. Futile attempt for survival. Desperate farmers sprinkled their crops with holy water and hollow figures with eyes as empty as their stomachs scraped Ireland's stubbled field with callous hands searching for one, just one healthy potato. All types of disease, tuberculosis, tore through the countryside as horses maintained a constant march, carting spent bodies to mass graves. It was more than just pestilence responsible for the Great Hunger. A political system ruled by London and an economic system dominated by the British. Absentee landlords were conspirators. For centuries, British laws had deprived Ireland. Boston, a city of little more than 100,000 people, saw 37,000 Irish arrive in a matter of few years. Naturally, it was difficult to integrate the newcomers, such as sheer numbers. The Irish in Boston were for a long time fattened to remain a massive lump in the community, undigestible, according to the historian Oscar Hamden, author of Boston Immigrants, 1790-1880. It's a time of the newly arrival, also around that time, the newly arrival Jews. And those that were already here distanced themselves from the newly arrival ones because of those that were here, they newfound status didn't want to mess that up. Some similarities of Irish, when it comes to the Irish, the immigration in the African American. Newfound status on because of there was a story of Paul Robeson and his family members. Where's that? I can't recall if it was his grandfather or whatever. I can't recall that. How he married a Native American, and did not want to mess up their newfound gain of status. For me, slavery was a thing of status control. People who have gained, who had no status and now have status, do not want to mess it up and don't want to interact with a certain group or class of people. Yes. Study of acculturation. The Irish fill the most menial and dangerous jobs, often at low pay. They cut canals, they dug trenches for water and sewer pipes, and they laid rail lines, they cleaned houses, and they slaved in textile mills. They worked as stable workers and blacksmiths. Not only did working class Americans see the cheaper laborers taking their jobs, but some of the Irish refugees even took up arms against the new homeland during Mexican-American War, doing in part by higher wages due in part to higher wages and common faith with the Mexicans. But some members of the St. Patrick Battalion had also deserted the U.S. Army after encountering ill treatment, military culture as well, disgruntled Irish, but not even able to practice the faith that they believe, being marginalized, ill-treated by their bigot commander and fighting with the enemy. After their capture, 50 members of St. Patricio's, a group of men, were executed by the U.S. Army for their treacherous decision. A natives' backlash begins. Join the Mexican War. You join the side of the Mexicans because of their being ill-treated. What is the purpose in all this? There was another gentleman who fought in the American-Spanish War. I can't recall his name. African American that was on the African American side, but he joined the side of whom he was initially fighting against, because he realized that it was an unjust war, and his conscience would not allow that to take place. When you think of African American scholars, what do you think of? What is their duty? It says about maybe 6% of African Americans are professors. If it's so, I don't know. You read the data. Maybe I'm saying something wrong. There's nothing matter at this point in my life, because I'm trying to make a point. What is the percentage of African American scholars? You know, you can so-called Google it. But my point is that what is their duty? I mean, what is their duty? Is to have a program that is designed and committed to working with the underserved community and help them to cultivate their career chosen path. Everywhere, not everywhere, but most time what it pops up is an entertainer. He or she seems to be celebrated. Was sister named Georgia Simpson, I guess considered to be the first African American woman, I guess, received a PhD, maybe. Monroe Trotter, Dr. W. Du Bois. I'm just naming some few people. What is it that African Americans is known for? Are they known for hip hop? It said 2019 there were 2,512 African Americans who earned doctorates. They made up 7.1% of all doctorates awarded to the U.S. citizens on permanent residence in the U.S. by U.S., but there are many fields where black earn only tiny percentage of all doctorates. We're known to be entertainers, entertainment. Are they serving the uncommitted to the career paths, or cultivating the career paths of the underserved communities? If that generation gets together with those, that success, get successful people financially, get together with those in the academic field, and invest in the well-being of the underserved, as it's called, community. Yes, I put together a maybe 8 books, 9 books, whatever it is. I don't consider myself to be a scholar, but each title of my book and the literature that is inside is living out and fulfilling in the tradition of the ancestors, to help cultivate the career paths. And I know I'm being maybe modern with that word, connecting with it, is the underserved community. I'm going to read something from another chapter, a book. I think I found what I was looking for. The task of the colonizer believed that they had to impose their civilization on black inhabitants of their colonies. Also, it was the responsibility of white people to govern and impart their culture to non-white people. They are to manage the affairs of the less developed non-white peoples. Take up the white man's burden, send forth the best, yea, breed, go bind your sons to exile, to serve your captive need to wait in heavy harness for flooded folk and wild. Your new caught sullen peoples, half devil, half child, take up the white man's burden in patience to abide, to veil the threat of terror and check the show of the pride by open speech and simple, 100 times made plain, to seek another's profit and work another's gain. In patience to abide by the veil, the threat of terror and check the show of pride by open speech and simple 100 times made plain to another prophet for another's gain. Take up the white man's burden, reap his old reward. The blame of those ye better, the hate of those ye guard, the city of hosts, humor, as slowly to the light. While bought ye us from bondage, our love Egyptian night, take up the white man's burden, have done with childish days the lightly prophet, the laurel, the essay, ungrudged praise come now to search your manhood. Search for manhood, womanhood, childhood. Search for humanity. That which I was looking for, dealing with the Spanish-American War, Philippines, our brother named David Fagan. I'm going to read on. U.S. victory of war produced a peace treaty that compelled the Spanish to relinquish claims on Cuba, the sovereignty over Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines to the United States. The U.S. also annexed independence, the state of Hawaii during the conflict, so was the reason for American-Spanish War. Bill Fletcher Jr., international activist and writer, said the U.S. government plus major corporations wanted control over key parts of the Spanish Empire. They wanted the Philippines because of trade in America, trade in Asia, and wanted a reliable base for the U.S. military. They wanted Cuba and Puerto Rico, as well as though they were willing to settle for Cuba as a neo-colony. The overtly racist side of the conflict became apparent. This is what I want you to see. The connection to the patricios, the Irish who went on the side of the Mexicans. The overtly racist side of the conflict became apparent to the African American soldiers who were demoralized, as well as some who deserted. The possibly most known was David Fagan. He went to fight on the side of the Filipinos. In fact, became an officer in the Filipino army. The trickery in it all, what I'm seeing and observing and experiencing, that African Americans are still developing ways to interact with one another and throwing off the ways of which they were trained to act or interact with each other. Can the scholars, or is it the scholars' duty to expose this, to share this, to help serve the underserved community, to cultivate their career paths, and to bring awareness that anytime you are being marginalized, that you fight against that marginalization. Morally, academically, let's say spiritually, let's say intellectually, I don't know what word to use. Because we do not want to take on the same trait that when we interact with each other, we become so insensitive that we wind up marginalizing each other and serving the interests of a system that has marginalized us. Okay, scholars. What you gonna do? If you're doing it, serving the underserved community to cultivate their career paths, I would say more power to you. Until next time.